Hi, I'm Steve Rappaport, Knowledge Solutions Director for the Advertising Research Foundation and author of Listen First, Turning Social Media Conversations into Business Advantage. And today I'm having a conversation with Mike Blacker, and Mike's the head of sales for a company called Quova. Mike, hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Quova and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so well, I've been in the industry for a long time, since I was a pup, actually. I started at InfoSeek back in 1995. Believe it or not, before Yahoo.
You started InfoSeek?
InfoSeek. I started at InfoSeek,
Oh.
so it was my first job out of college, actually selling advertising, and then kind of grew up in the industry, in the digital industry in San Francisco. So worked for CBS Sportsline, and then did a number of startups over the years. And I've been at Quova for about 5-6 months now.
Yeah. Now Quova is really about geolocation.
Exactly.
Right.
So Quova is the leading provider of geolocation data in the industry. So we provide the geolocation layer for people to figure out, or for websites and retailers to figure out where people are when they're online.
Right.
And the big challenge is that without the data intelligence that we and some other companies like us provide, you wouldn't know if somebody was coming from Australia or South America or Detroit.
Yeah. Well, tell us about, because a lot of people aren't familiar with your services and really the value of geolocation data. So first, let's talk about what is geolocation data.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good point. So,
and why is it important?
Well, if you think about the structure of the internet, in order to figure out where somebody is, you have to have a key indicator. And we use the IP address to determine where somebody is. And it's really become a science. I mean, there are a lot of public registries where people can figure out where people are located to some degree. But the science of it is understanding where those IP blocks move, who has control of them, what service provider, what region in the world. So we provide that layer for a number of reasons. Content localization, store locators is a big one for us. So if you go to Walmart.com or one of the big retailers, the ability for you to not have to type in your zip code. Fraud detection is a huge one for us, as we were talking, the anonymizers.
Tell us about that.
So fraud detection is a growing concern online because the thieves are getting more technically advanced. The ability to use an anonymizer to mask where you are. So if you're in Russia or Africa and you want to go and buy a Rolex watch from a company that's US based, you can mask where you're coming from to look like you live in San Francisco or LA. In order to figure that out, our technology will actually look at trace routes and be able to figure out that that person isn't where they say they are. And that intelligence for a retailer is really important.
So actually, just to put it in different words, where there was and still is a concern with click fraud,
yes.
Right? This is really location fraud.
It is. And click fraud's a big one for us. I mean, we are definitely looking more into the technology of advertising and being able to solve some of those problems. More granular location is a big one. I mean, we want to get down to the neighborhood level on that hyper-local level to help hyper-local businesses, mom-and-pop businesses, more effectively advertise in their cities as well.
Right.
But that's more of a technical problem inside the network. I mean, right now we're really, country, city, state is really kind of what we're focused on right now. So, if you're a merchant and you want to have a different showing on your website for, the south versus the north right now, in Arizona it's flea season, in Chicago it's still snowing.
Right.
And so websites like Petco want to be able to show different content when you come to their site. They also want to detect fraud. They want to do a store locator. Yeah. And by the way, they also want to advertise more locally around their stores.
Right. And so are you seeing that the data is also then being used to localized would be the...
Personalized, no. I mean,
Yeah.
I think getting into the more personalization, I think, is more of a cookie and behavioral targeting issue.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a whole different can of worms. As we all know what's going on in the industry right now with do not track, behavioral targeting taking on some heat. We're not tracking people's individual patterns. I don't want to know what your behavior is. I just want to know where you live.
Yeah.
Because once we have that, we have a good proxy for who you are. And for a lot of the big retailers, they don't necessarily want to behavioral target you. They want to regionally target you, and they want to demographically target you.
Right.
So knowing what your behavioral pattern is, for a lot of people, it's important.
I mean, it's really interesting, because how granular can you get? Because, if you take Walmart, right? Something like, 80% of the population lives within 3 miles
That's a good point.
of a Walmart? And so there's lots of Walmart. So,
let's take a different one. Let's take Target. And Target, I'm just familiar with this. 30% of Target's revenue is ethnically designated. And so the ability for them to Hispanic target around stores based on not only geography, so Target knows that 80% of their sales come within 14-minute drive time of their store. They don't want to reach people that live 25 minutes away
Right.
because the likelihood that they're going to drive 25 minutes to a Target is pretty low.
Yeah.
But you're right. In some of those stores, Walmart's probably a bad example
Yeah,
because it's
it is.
the biggest company.
Yeah.
But think about a regional Jimmy John's, sandwich shop in Chicago. They want to reach people in their neighborhood.
Right.
And that challenge for us is something we're really focused on, is helping those regional businesses and the big businesses too. I mean, you look at Lowe's. Lowe's is a great example, or Home Depot. In one direction, they might be high income and they come in and buy stainless steel high-end appliances, and the other direction might be low income and they buy the cheapest thing possible. They want to target differently to each of those folks online, and right now it's not really possible.
Yeah, but there's more implications to that, because if you're finding that sales are of a type in this kind of store and sales are a different type in that kind of store, that has implications for marketing, merchandising, stocking. And all of that, yeah.
Well, and I think the holy grail for this is how do you make the determination between online advertising and offline sales, right? When you talk about retailers or anybody that has a store, you want to advertise online, and you know the click-through is going to be bad, if not zero. How do you prove that that person is getting up from their computer and going in and buying something? A great example is Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Kraft, all of the big consumer packaged goods companies. You don't search for toothpaste online. You might. Maybe some people do on Google.
You might research a toothpaste, but you may not search for a toothpaste.
Yeah, you may research, but for the most part, anything that's in the grocery store, most people spend very little time making consumer decisions online to go into the grocery store and buy something. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but for the most part, it's branding, right? So Procter & Gamble and Kraft, they want to brand differently. Kraft macaroni and cheese, they want to reach people in low income. If you look at somebody like Bank of America for their business credit card, they want to reach people in areas where there's high income, 150,000 plus. The way that the internet is architected right now, we don't have accurate demographics. We just never have. In 15, 16 years of this industry, we've always been searching for the same thing over and over, which is geolocation and demographics. What we're doing is driving that down so we can make better decisions for advertisers, so they can make the decisions on what they want to advertise to their customers.
Mike, this has been a fantastic conversation. I learned a tremendous amount.
Good.
Yeah, I hope everybody who's watching this learns as much, because it's not an area that we talk about a lot.
No, and it's interesting. John Battelle, I saw him at the IAB conference a couple weeks ago, and I said, why is nobody talking about local advertising? I don't know if you saw it this morning. The Kelsey Group came out with some predictions that by 2015, the local online advertising sector is going to grow to $42 billion. So we're talking about a big number.
That's a big number.
We're talking about a huge number, and if you think about it, mom and pop advertising, I've never been able to find the source of this, but throughout my career I always heard that half of all advertising is local. It's bus shelters, it's newspapers, it's word of mouth and things like that. We've never really online been able to figure that out, and mostly it's been branding. It's been Ford and Bank of America and big, and then you start to look at behavioral targeting, which is more response driven. Behavioral targeting certainly has its purpose, but the behavioral ceiling, I call it, and I spent a lot of time at audience science, so I'm pretty familiar with kind of the limitations of behavioral targeting. It's great for certain advertisers, but for Procter & Gamble, it's not that great, because you can't really build a toothpaste segment. You can find people in certain demographics, and that's helpful to them, but we're really trying to figure that out in the industry still.
Yeah, last question. Many of the people that I talk, and it's the nature of this show here, is that people talk about big brands, but you've talked about using geodata for smaller and regional brands. Could you just talk about the value of this kind of data for them?
For a local advertiser? Yeah, mom and pop. It's huge. And I use a lot of examples. I grew up in Seattle, so I'll use Seattle as an example. But if you're a bike shop, let's say, in Ballard, which is on the north part of Seattle, and you want to advertise online, right now, really your only ability to advertise in the Seattle market is to buy DMA level advertising. And so if you're a bike shop in a local neighborhood, your radius of people that are buying from your store is pretty small. To advertise to people that are 20, 30 miles away, the likelihood you're going to get in your car and drive 30 miles to go to a bike shop and pass 50 of them on the way is pretty low. So helping small businesses reach their consumers online is huge for us. And it's huge for small businesses because they don't have that ability right now. Yellow Pages is down. I was at the Burrell conference a few weeks ago here in New York, and they were saying that they think there's going to be a transition of about $5 billion from the Yellow Page industry to online in the next 5 years because people don't open their Yellow Pages. They pull out their device and they search. Local newspaper readership is down. I think television is really the only one that's still kind of maintained, but spot TV is it's expensive and it's hard to buy. Finding a way for local merchants to be able to reach their audience where they spend their time, which is online. Facebook's doing a great job, and I think Facebook has a real opportunity to localize. But the problem is that it's just Facebook. I mean, people do spend time in other places, surprisingly. You wouldn't know it from the numbers, but I think the idea is how do you reach people in your neighborhood when they're online and make it effective for merchants, and you don't want to waste that advertising. And if it's outside of your buying radius, then it's wasted advertising, and those dollars don't come back. And so there are a lot of people in the industry that tried this early on and found that when you talk to a local merchant and then you advertise to the entire DMA, they don't come back and spend money because they didn't see anybody walk in their door and say, here's a coupon, or I saw your ad. So we need to figure that out as an industry. I mean, it's a $42 billion industry. We're going to start looking really hard at it, I think, as an industry more and more in the next couple of years.
Well, phenomenal. We'll have to leave it there.
Great.
But let's talk again.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Good to finally meet you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure.